So I did a search of the scientific literature, and what I found out about sun exposure and its effects on cancer risk is some of the most surprising information I've ever discovered when looking into a health topic. Something that appeared to be very counterintuitive. I had heard about a claimed link between increased natural sun exposure and reduced cancer risk somewhere, but I was so skeptical that I completely dismissed it for years. But eventually I looked up the research and honestly felt like I had to do a double take, which is a feeling I almost never get. I don't do double takes. I'm not a double take kind of guy, you could say. But in this case, it turns out the link appears to be real. It's actually true. More natural sun exposure appears, in many cases, to lead to less cancer risk. And the evidence is really quite strong. Of course, having said all that, there is an exception. There is one cancer type where more sun exposure is linked to more cancer. But it should be easy to account for, and I'll address that later in the video. I've put timestamps at the bottom of this video if you'd like to jump forward to a specific topic. So let's take a look at what I found by searching the scientific literature, and from this point onwards I might be referring to sunlight as solar UVB. So let's get on with it. In this article published in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology in 2024, clinical dermatologist Richard Weller points out that research on the effect of sunlight on health has been limited almost exclusively on harmful effects, and yet no research data linking increased all-cause mortality with sunlight exposure exist, despite the known carcinogenic or cancer-causing effects of excessive sunlight on skin. So, no increased deaths with increased sun, eh? Well, a very balanced view is found in this article, published in the journal Photochemical and Photobiological Sciences in 2023. They say, alongside the harms, increasing recognition of the benefits is informing public health and clinical practice. For people with pigmented skin, this underpins strategies to balance the risks and benefits of sun exposure. For those with deeply pigmented skin, knowledge of the importance of sun exposure may be particularly relevant for those living in areas with low ambient UV radiation, for whom the benefits of sun exposure for most people, with the exception of those at risk of inflammatory skin disorders, are likely to outweigh the harms. So it seems there are risks and benefits to sun exposure. Could getting extra sun improve health in any way? Well, this systematic review published in the Journal of Steroid Biochemistry and Molecular Biology in 2019 shows a tenuous link between more sun exposure and less risk of high blood pressure and less risk of cardiovascular disease, or heart disease as we more commonly call it. Speaking broadly, they noticed that some observational studies showed somewhat lower blood pressure and incidence of heart disease with more sun, and some clinical trials, these are more accurate studies, also showed on the whole slightly lower blood pressure only. So there did seem to be some advantage to getting more sun overall, but the standout here is that there was no negative effect of extra sun identified. Well, let's look at this in terms of different cancer types then. This review published in the journal Anti-Cancer Research in 2012 found that there are 15 types of cancer where people who were exposed to more UVB light or sunlight showed a reduced risk of getting those cancers. This is what we call an inverse correlation, where more of one exposure appears to be connected to less of a particular health outcome. Many of the cancers covered by this review are very common cancer types which affect countless millions of people around the world. The review listed breast cancer, lung cancer, cervical cancer, colon cancer, gastric cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreatic cancer, rectal cancer, renal cancer, bladder cancer, endometrial cancer, esophageal cancer, vulvar cancer, and Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. According to the review, people who got more sun got less of those cancers. There was also an indication of a reduced risk in a few other cancer types, but the evidence wasn't as strong. Hey, this is a long list of common cancers, but can it be backed up? Seems it can by this 2022 review article in the journal Anti-Cancer Research, where the authors point out there is an inverse association between sun exposure and cancer prognosis, meaning the duration and harm done by the cancer appear to be reduced. The review also points out reduced hypertension or high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. I honestly didn't expect to find this wealth of research suggesting that getting more sun could be beneficial for health and fighting disease. So there's a very important detail regarding the positive effect of sun exposure on disease risk. Well, we all know that getting sunlight on our skin helps us produce our own vitamin D, and that is a good thing. Great, that's a given. Well, the authors of the review I just mentioned make clear that the vitamin D and nitric oxide produced in the skin due to sun exposure appear to be a very significant part of the health benefits. Remember, vitamin D is important in a huge range of health-sustaining functions, and nitric oxide, once released, acts as a vasodilator, meaning it widens blood vessels, which can lead to lower blood pressure. But back to cancer again. This systematic review published in the European Journal of Cancer in 2013 points out that getting natural sunlight tends to increase vitamin B production within our bodies. Endogenous vitamin D, that is, as we all know. And increased vitamin D levels are also associated with reduced cancer risk. So which one is most important? Is it the extra sunlight or is it the extra vitamin D? The answer is, it's very hard to say, but evidence continually mounts that vitamin D reduces the spread of cancers within the body. In this 2013 review from the journal Nutrients, the authors present a very detailed coverage of the various ways vitamin D reduces the spread of cancers, including cell cycle arrest, which reduces cancer cell proliferation or production, inducing apoptosis or death of the offending cells, and suppressing factors that promote cancer metastasis, also another word for spreading. So it's either the vitamin D or some other effects sunlight has on us that help reduce the risk of certain cancers. Either way, it appears to be the case. It's a strong enough correlation that it's worth knowing. But importantly, the only positive correlation between sun exposure and any cancer I could find was, of course, skin cancer. On that note, there is no disagreement I could find. For some people in some situations, more sun exposure can cause skin cancer. So what do? Personally, I think you have to find out what your own tolerance for sun exposure is, and I don't think we should ever let our skin get sunburned. I guess you could say more low-level sun on skin would be beneficial for most people, but again, don't get burned. And as you may have guessed by now, I'm not covering sunbed use here. I want to make that very clear. I don't endorse sunbed use. I don't know anything about it, to be honest, and I won't be discussing any sunbed-related studies. Well, I got to go see a man about a dog again. So thank you for watching. If you found this information interesting, then please consider booping the like button and subscribing to the channel. And have a beaut day. I'll see you in the next video.